Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. There's something no journalist I've seen has mentioned about the recently concluded Democratic Convention. The Democratic Convention of 2020 proves that Joe Biden can be effective at turning promises into realities in a way no president has shown in over a decade. Why? Biden can turn his rivals into allies. He can mobilize minorities. And most important, he can work across party lines. He can bring Republicans over to his side. In other words, Joe Biden can bring people together and use their unity to make change. This is radically different from Donald Trump. President Trump pulls people apart, sets them at each other's throats, and offers accelerated deterioration, accelerated degeneration, and accelerated decay. Donald Trump is the maker of chaos. In other words, Donald Trump is the non-stop master at making what he accused Barack Obama of making. Donald Trump is the master of making a mess. What's more, for the 14 years in which Mitch McConnell has led Republicans in the Senate, Congress has become increasingly irrelevant, and the presidency has gained in power, a dangerous thing for a democracy, a tendency that lends toward dictatorship. Why has Congress become semi-comatose? Because no one has been capable of working across party lines. The parties hate each other, and they punish compromisers in their own ranks. But compromise is what politics is all about, and no one has been able to bind partisans who hate each other together in order to get things done the way Joe Biden has. Biden is white, a white male, but he is able to pull minority support. His endorsement by James Clyburn, the African-American congressman from South Carolina, helped Biden pull ahead of every other candidate in the primaries. And Biden has yanked in support from a host of other black leaders, from high-profile Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, to Ibram X. Kendi, the author of the #1 best-selling book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Then there's our standing as leader of the free world. That American leadership is no longer available. It no longer exists. Instead, we are mocked and parodied. We are the nation whose president talked about fighting the coronavirus by injecting bleach. We are the nation with the highest number of coronavirus deaths in the world. We are the nation with more coronavirus deaths than our two nearest competitors combined. In other words, we are the nation whose president has been the coronavirus's greatest ally. We are the world's poster child for coronavirus failure. Under Donald Trump, other nations are abandoning us. Argentina has struck a deal with China to establish a space launch facility in South America. That rocket launch pad could easily become a convenient place from which to point nuclear-tipped missiles and hypersonic weapons at the United States. And China has taken advantage of our crippling sanctions against Iran. It has stepped in to be Iran's biggest oil customer. And China has stepped in to be the lifter of the Iranian economy. Then there's the entire Middle East, which Donald Trump, the great deal maker, handed to Vladimir Putin as a gift with nothing in exchange. And there are the European Union's conferences on confronting the coronavirus, conferences of the sort we would have been invited to in the pre-Trump era, conferences where leaders like Germany's Angela Merkel want nothing to do with us. In Merkel's case, that's because Donald Trump has snubbed and insulted her. Can we win back the confidence of the world? Can we win back our position as leader of the Western Alliance? It isn't going to be easy. America is perceived as a nation on a downward slide, a nation being eclipsed by China, a nation being pushed into decline by Donald Trump. But Joe Biden's support from international leaders hints that our allies badly want to normalize things. They badly want Biden to win. Joe Biden has something that I've never seen before. endorsements from heads of state and former heads of state of our allies, allies who want nothing to do with Donald Trump. Biden has been endorsed by Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mahathir Mohamad, current Prime Minister of Malaysia, Guy Verhofstadt, former Prime Minister of Belgium, and Donald Tusk, former President of the European Council and former Prime Minister of Poland. Contrast that with Donald Trump, whose biggest international supporter is Russia's Vladimir Putin, an enemy, not an ally. Unlike Trump, who makes enemies, Joe Biden is so good at coalition building that there is an entire article in Wikipedia on those who have endorsed him. It's 148 pages long and 38,000 words, the length of half a book. It contains roughly 2,500 names, the names of 2,500 people of importance Joe Biden has won over, 2,500 people of importance Joe Biden has recruited to his cause. For example, Biden has been endorsed by a slew of national security officials who recognize that Donald Trump is destroying our standing on the international stage and that we need rapid repair to our frayed credibility. Those national security officials also know that Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's puppet, that Donald Trump is handing Europe to Putin on a platter, that Trump eagerly passes sensitive intelligence information to the Russians, that Trump pays no attention to his daily national security briefings, and that Trump is deliberately crippling our 17 intelligence agencies. Those key national intelligence heads who have endorsed Biden include James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence under Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama; Michael Hayden, Director of the National Security Agency and Director of the Central Intelligence Agency under George W. Bush and Barack Obama; and the man Donald Trump theatrically fired, James Comey, Director of the FBI. Then there's Joe Biden's ability to bind up wounds, his ability to recruit his former allies to his team. Just about every one of the 28 major candidates who ran against Biden for the 2020 presidential nomination crossed the ideological divide and joined his team. Those rivals who became allies include Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Yang, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and Michael Bloomberg. This is a miracle that only Joe Biden could have pulled off. This is the rare capability that historian Doris Kearns Goodwin saw in, guess who? Abraham Lincoln. The ability to piece together a team of rivals. Most important is the real key to working across the aisle and making things happen. Support from, of all people, Republicans. At least 17 Republicans have endorsed Biden. In past elections, it would have been unthinkable for a Republican to endorse a Democrat. But in this election, Joe Biden, with his persuasive powers and his ability to impress others with his decency, has changed that. Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, appeared at the Democratic convention. Why? Her husband, a Republican, stood for integrity and honesty. Donald Trump is the satanic opposite of those values. He stands for corruption, cronyism, cruelty, and lies. But Biden's honesty and compassion are obvious to all who know him. So there's Colin Powell, the former Secretary of State under Republican President George W. Bush, who also spoke at the Democratic convention. John Kasich, a Republican governor who spoke at the Democratic convention. Other Republicans who have endorsed Biden include Anthony Scaramucci, a former communications director for and sidekick of Donald Trump, George Conway, husband of Trump's sharp-tongued advisor Kellyanne Conway, former Fox TV news anchor Gretchen Carlson, conservative TV guest S.E. Cupp, former Wall Street Journal columnist and editor of the Wall Street Journal's op-ed page Max Boot, former Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel, a Republican, former New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman, a Republican, former Chief of Staff to Republican Vice President Dick Cheney, Bill Kristol, Roy LaHood, Secretary of Transportation under Republican President George W. Bush, Richard Armitage, former United States Deputy Secretary of State under George W. Bush. Nicholas Burns, former Undersecretary of State for George W. Bush. Christopher Hill, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs under George W. Bush. Carly Fiorina, who ran against Trump for the Republican nomination for president. Republicans Jeff Flake, Joe Lieberman, Charlie Dent, Bill Weld, Sarah Longwell, the publisher of the conservative publication The Bulwark, Steve Schmidt, chief strategist for John McCain, and George Will, one of the founding fathers of the conservative mainstream media column. Oh, then there's former Republican political strategist and TV guest Rick Wilson, author of the book Everything Trump Touches Dies, former Republican candidate for California Governor Meg Whitman, and even Sully Sullenberger, the Republican pilot who brought United Flight 1549 to a safe landing in the waters of the Hudson River. What's the significance of all this Republican support? Republican support for, of all things, a Democratic presidential candidate. Remember Kamala Harris' attack on Joe Biden in the Democratic presidential debates? She slammed Biden for working with Southern segregationists in the Senate in the 1970s. She implied that Biden was a racist. But Biden didn't work with Southern segregationist senators because he agreed with them. He worked with them despite the fact that he disagreed with them. In other words, he worked across the aisle. He found those things on which the harshest enemies agreed. Then he put together coalitions of enemies. Why? To get things done, to make things happen. Things like the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act and the Violence Against Women Act. The ability to build astonishing coalitions, the ability to recruit others to his cause, is what will make Joe Biden something this nation hasn't seen in a long time. A leader who can pull those who disagree together. A leader who can use compromise and coalition building to get things done. A leader who can achieve what all presidents promise and few ever achieve. Unity. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. And now for that simpleton of a sneaky, sleazy, slimy, seditious, absolutely impossible to find off button.